Om Jnanatirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I'm going to speak in a response to some queries sent to me. Again, the issues are somewhat polemic and controversial. We'd like to speak only on what you might call direct Krishna consciousness, but it's also required to make the atmosphere in which we can peacefully speak on Krishna conscious topics to create that atmosphere. I don't know if in this Kali Yuga there ever will be such peace, even within Vaishnava society. We also see that when Krishna was in the world, he didn't have a very peaceful existence. Even when he was living in the village of Vrindavan, there was always some fight going on, either some demons or even among his own people, his own pure devotees. There was often some quarrel, misunderstanding. Of course, that's all Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibha. That's all pure bliss, but Krishna himself is a very polemic, controversial kind of person. So I suspect if we were to be devotees of Rama, then things might be more orderly and peaceful, because Rama is a more orderly and peaceful person than Krishna. Anyway, to get to the subject, specific subject here, I've been asked about proper behaviors, one of my disciples asking me, in relation to a god brother of mine who's a leading member of our movement, a guru and GBC member, over some philosophical come behavioral issues. And the disciple is wondering if it's proper for him to bring these points up. The point is that the guru or the god brother of mine in regularly in public speaks on intimately, well, I don't know how intimate, but anyway, pastimes of Radha and Krishna, and chants repeatedly Radhe Radhe, all these kind of things. So the disciple of mine is asking, is it correct for me to bring this up with him, that this is not what Srila Prabhupada wanted, please don't do that here. Is there not some egoism on my part? My reply is that this should be brought up. There may be some egoism on our part in discharging our duties, but that doesn't mean that the duty shouldn't be discharged. If we're using Prabhupada's instructions, or in the name of wanting to implement Srila Prabhupada's instructions, we're simply acting on the egoistic platform. Of course, that's not proper. But if we sincerely want to institute what Srila Prabhupada has given, and in doing so, some traces of our residual egoism manifest, well, that's not very good, but it's also understandable. And that's, as we learn from Bhagavad Gita, one should discharge one's duty, even if there is some fault in doing so. Of course, then comes the question, whose duty is it to do this? Well, actually, it's the duty of all followers of Srila Prabhupada to know what he instructed and to follow that. And there is a mystique about those who are direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and especially those who are initiating. But actually, every member of this movement has a right and a duty to speak or demand that we want things to be done in the way that Srila Prabhupada said. Preferably the GBC should stipulate standards that Srila Prabhupada and give clear guidelines to the movement. There's some indication of that going on, but in the meantime there are many other things going on, and leadership or direction is given by individual leaders, whoever they may be. It's not necessarily gurus, maybe temple presidents or just any charismatic individual who has an idea to preach Krishna consciousness or spread Krishna consciousness in various ways. So we find a lot of variety in our movement. That isn't necessarily bad, but the point is that Srila Prabhupada did give certain very specific guidelines on certain topics, and like I say, every devotee in this movement has a right to say that we want that in our temples and our gatherings we should do things the way that Srila Prabhupada prescribed, if he gave some specific instructions. Just like, for instance, there's one instruction of Srila Prabhupada which isn't very well known, that it's in one letter of Srila Prabhupada's, that in the temple room the only instruments that should be used are mridanga and kartals, which means not even harmonium. So that's not very well known, but if we do know it, then we should follow it. If Prabhupada specified such a point, we want to be followers of Srila Prabhupada, then we should follow that. And in fact, all devotees, they should demand from the leaders that if you're doing something which is clearly outside the parameters or specific instructions given by Srila Prabhupada, that we came to this movement, we want to follow Prabhupada. Not, you may have your idea and this and that and all right, but we want to follow Prabhupada. This is Srila Prabhupada's movement. Like I said, there is a certain mystique about direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Maybe we have to wait until all the disciples of Prabhupada have passed away, and then the whoever's left, they may at some point get together and say, "Hey, let's do things the Prabhupada way." They may be able to do it at that point, seeing as in the present generations there are so many Sahajya and Mayavad and Karmi ideas and practices and mundane psychology and all kinds of things being introduced. Maybe there'll be a grassroots revolution at some point and say, "Hey, let's do things the way Prabhupada wants. This is what we really want." So we're hoping for that day. In the meantime, to point these things out is a bit touchy, as I've been experiencing recently, because philosophical issues are there, but they are connected with individuals, and there are certain individuals who, for instance, talk a lot about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in their classes, although Srila Prabhupada never did that, and he intimated that we also shouldn't do that. If you have that tendency, if you're so much advanced, that's very nice, but I'm sure Srila Prabhupada was more advanced than you, and he didn't. So he gave what we needed. So even if you are so very advanced, then share it privately with your advanced friends. But don't bring it to to the public level. Speak Bhagavad Gita philosophy, as Srila Prabhupada always did. In his books, he gave the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So if we want to introduce things on a very high or intimate level, we should, as Prabhupada did, we should, as Prabhupada said, then we should do that in a certain company. It's not that the pastimes of Radha and Krishna are banned, but we have to see the eligibility of people also. Maybe we need 99% Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, first 9 cantos philosophy, and then occasionally a little of the higher topics. Otherwise, the tendency is there to be misunderstood, which Srila Prabhupada often said. Similarly, everyone in this movement, this is after all supposed to be Srila Prabhupada's movement, should know that Srila Prabhupada didn't introduce, didn't personally practice, and didn't recommend the chanting of Radhe, 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 Radhe like this. So then why should we do that? Everyone should be encouraged to chant the names of Radha as much as possible, but in the way that Srila Prabhupada taught us, in the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which Srila Prabhupada always emphasized. Srila Prabhupada, who is our link to Radha and Krishna, he taught us that the Hare Krishna mantra is a prayer to Radha and Krishna to be engaged in their service. And he didn't encourage or approve the chanting of Radhe, Radhe, Radhe and all. So, we should have faith that if we follow the practice and precept of Srila Prabhupada, that Srila Prabhupada will give us everything that we need. We sing that daily, that Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha, all our desires will be fulfilled by His mercy, all the spiritual desires that we have. So, it's maybe in future we can come to a point where the devotees will say, "Hey, look, let's get back. Let's be on the line that Prabhupada gave us." That there are all kinds of things, Like we've heard, for instance, that some sannyasis have large funds in their own personal bank accounts, and obviously that's not what sannyas is meant to be for. I also have a personal bank account, but I don't keep much in there. I need something for traveling around here and there, and that's what it's for. How much is in there now? Do you know? 20,000? 30,000 rupees I have at the moment. But amassing large sums of money, and of course large sums of money can be used for Krishna, but it sets a bad precedent if it's kept in a personal account. And like this. At best we could say it generates suspicion. Like this, in all respects, we should follow Srila Prabhupada. What exactly that means, of course, people will interpret some things in different ways. But like I say, there are certain things which Srila Prabhupada gave, which are very clear, which, if it's clear, then we should just follow that's all. We don't need to add anything new. We are very safe if we follow what Srila Prabhupada said. In the case, what do you do if there's a senior who's introducing these things? Well, I wouldn't make it a personal issue. It becomes a personal issue if it's just you and him. As is well known, I'm not the most diplomatic person myself, but if you are in Vaishnav community or a temple, then in the absence of worldwide GBC policies on various topics, then local temple authorities or community authorities can set their local standards. They can make their kirtan standards, like, for instance, which should be clearly based on Srila Prabhupada's kirtan standards. For instance, that we chant mostly the Hare Krishna mantra. We don't chant Radhe, Radhe, Radhe. It may be occasional, on Radhashtami, something like that, but even then, I don't see that Srila Prabhupada, we don't have any record even on Radhashtami of Srila Prabhupada chanting Radhe, Radhe, Radhe. So better to chant the names of Radha by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. So standards should be set, that the lectures should be like this, and then the kirtan should be like this. It can come from the temple president or temple authorities or whatever it is, if it's a congregational group, the leadership, and that should be the standard for everyone and should be based, these are Prabhupada's instructions, this is why we're having this, and this can be just shown to everyone who comes in, and the standard applies for everyone, and it doesn't become something like, well, you're doing this against my guru, but no, it's just we want to follow Prabhupada's instructions. If someone isn't doing that, well, it's not something against him, it's something for him. He can get in the line that Srila Prabhupada gave us, and if someone doesn't want to, if Prabhupada's clear instructions are there and we don't want to follow, well, there's something very seriously wrong there. So that's my suggestion on this point. Hare Krishna. You want to say something? Yeah. I mean, these kind of discussions can go on and on, like I said. I don't know how many thousands of hours have gone in discussing these things. It's like, we're going through some dark ages or something like that. But we're hoping for the golden age to come again. Like I say, it may not, we may have to wait until all of Prabhupada's disciples have passed away, and then in the absence, maybe some more charismatic figures with all kinds of wonderful ideas, different to those of Prabhupada, will come up. But it may be that we have to wait, and I don't know why it's allowed or encouraged in our movement that leaders, or anyone, they regularly talk on very esoteric topics and don't get up in the morning for Mangalati. Of course, nowadays they mostly have an excuse because they're getting older and health problems, but even previously, it looks very imbalanced to me as someone, you never see them before 7 o'clock in the morning, and then they come and talk on some very high topics. It's something very, double strange there. Strange squared. And then if you add, like very opulent personal living, then it becomes strange cubed. Yeah, what do you want to say? Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami, yes. They've written, Rupa Goswami and previous, they've written commentaries on very high topics. Yeah, that's true. Is it not for Kali Yuga people? It's for very advanced devotees. They weren't printed and distributed by Lal Bihari and company. Or that you walk into an ISKCON temple and the first book you see is the pastimes of Radharani. I mean, everyone wants to buy it. In Mangalore, someone brought a book, The Pastimes of Radharani, and what did I do? He wanted me to sign it, a book about the pastimes of Radharani. And what did I do? I told him he shouldn't read it. Told him he should read Bhagavad Gita. I should have confiscated the book, but he's just a completely new person, so he couldn't have understood that. People come completely new and immediately they get all this. It's violence on their spiritual lives. Then they're never going to understand the basic things. It's something like, you say, okay, we want to make you into an Einstein. So immediately you start teaching all esoteric, atomic, relativity theory. They can't understand a thing. You want to make them an Einstein? First of all, teach them 2 + 2 = 4. Go step by step. You can't artificially bump someone up to that level. They may mouth all that, someone will say E = mc². They haven't got a clue what it means. So in the same way, people will talk about, Krishna's pulling the clothes of the gopis and all these things. They have no idea even about the basic teachings of Bhagavad. We often see that actually, people they'll be talking about all these pastimes. They don't have a clue what the basic teachings of Bhagavad Gita are. And I know that Prabhupada won't be pleased with that. So Rupa Goswami, yes, he wrote very elevated books. So you become elevated by the step-by-step process. And then we're not saying that these books are banned, no. They are our worshipable prayojana, ultimate goal of life. But, like I say, I already said that when you're actually advanced, then you discuss it among those you have to discuss, or in that circle. It's not meant for public discussion. We don't find that Rupa Goswami went out and preached about all these things. Actually, in Bengal, Orissa, Manipur, there were like this, like Raslila dramas, like that. We'll find Rasikananda organized that. But by the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he perceived that the pure culture that was surrounding that had been lost, and that in the name of songs about Radha and Krishna, it was just an excuse for promiscuity, sexual promiscuity. So then he called for a change in the direction of the Sampradaya, or the emphasis, or the public emphasis of the Sampradaya. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati brought that in strongly. So we should follow. You should see first of all if who's actually fit for that. And don't go among neophytes and people who are, on one hand we say we want to speak on the higher levels. On the other hand, we don't emphasize the 4 regulated principles. And we're very soft on the principles, and don't say anything to householders, and we don't want to get on the case of householders, but it may be that many of the householders in our movement are not very strictly following one of the principles in particular. Guess which one? So, okay, we're not going to hammer you on the head for that, but at the same time, considering the reality of that, then why are we going to speak on the pastimes of Radha and Krishna? Speak on sense control within Krishna consciousness, as Krishna did in Bhagavad Gita. That's more realistic, isn't it? That's to actually help people advance in their spiritual life. What are we interested in? We want to help people advance. Why are we coming and speaking? We want to help people make practical advancement, or we just want to, I don't know, have a circus or something, have a show, or what's going on? So these are some general principles. And at the same time, we have to be very careful not to make offenses. We shouldn't think if someone's doing something which is outside the scope of Prabhupada's teachings that he's totally bogus in every respect. And we also don't want to waste our life on the internet, flame wars and all these kind of things. That's why I'm trying to just like say these things and establish some principle. I may be somewhat crude in my way of saying it. I still didn't get that art of speaking very pleasingly. I don't know how to say things that are basically displeasing to others in a pleasing way. But we should be careful about Vaishnava aparadha. Recently, I was involved in some issue in which, in a manner that was widely seen as inappropriate, I criticized someone. And even though I still feel that the criticism was valid, the fact that some devotees or many devotees felt very hurt by that criticism, and then I feel that I made some offense in doing so. So we know the pastime that is recorded in Bhakti Ratnaka of Rupa Goswami. In deep in meditation, he saw some pastime of Radha and Krishna, some humorous pastime in which he was laughing. He laughed. Externally he laughed because internally he was seeing some joyful or humorous pastime of Radha and Krishna. But it just happened that some devotee was present who was physically deformed. He just happened to be there, who was nothing like on the stature of Rupa Goswami, but he misunderstood that Rupa Goswami was laughing at him for his physical deformity, and he felt offended by that. So even Rupa Goswami had absolutely no intention to offend him whatsoever, because that devotee felt offended. That's recorded in Bhakti Ratnaka, that Rupa Goswami then he couldn't enter into the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. It became lost to him, and he wondered why that was so, and then he found out, and then that became clear. So we have to be, it's a very fine line, because we have to be careful of making offenses to devotees. At the same time, we don't want to offend Srila Prabhupada by just disobeying his instructions. So, where's the greatest offense? To tolerate all kinds of things which are not pleasing to Srila Prabhupada because we don't want to offend others. It's like if you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, kind of thing. But if we are sincere in our intentions to serve the mission of Srila Prabhupada, then certainly Srila Prabhupada will help us. It's a very touchy thing. We have to be very careful not to offend Vaishnavas. On the other hand, we don't want to, in the name of just unity and diversity, we just have all kinds of wild things going on. Like I said, of course there is diversity. Srila Prabhupada himself gave this formula of unity and diversity. So there is room for diversity, but when Srila Prabhupada has given very clear guidelines, everyone in our movement knows that Prabhupada didn't approve of the Radhe Radhe chanting, isn't it? I think they should know. Maybe they don't. I propose that everyone read all of Prabhupada's books and listen to his lectures. That would really make a lot of difference to our movement, because a lot of devotees are not doing that, and they really don't have much link with Prabhupada. The main link is, especially after Prabhupada has left our physical presence, is the main link is by his instructions, which he left in his book. So if we read that, we'll imbibe the mood of Srila Prabhupada. But again, that we should take our Prabhupada straight and not mix it with like academic understanding and all this. So we find sometimes in the courses that are given, they're based on some kind of Monday schooling. And we should start talking about it, there's no end. I mean, Prabhupada clearly said that we're not going to have the government syllabus in our schools, but nowadays in our schools there's hardly any schools in ISKCON which don't have government syllabi. So, what happened? Did Prabhupada get it wrong or what? Oh, we got it wrong. I don't think that Prabhupada got it wrong. Yeah, we have to be careful. Where to draw the line, I don't know. I'm probably drawing it too far one way, and you know which way that is. On the other hand, if no one is saying anything, well, someone has to say something. So, I'm reminded of the example of Ramanuja, and of course I'm not fit to be, even within 1,000,000 miles of a speck of dust that was touched by the feet of Ramanuja Acharya. But he took the mantra from Goshti Purna, his guru, and who refused to give it to him. 17 times he refused to give it to the most qualified disciple he could. Ramanuja is more qualified than Goshti Purna, although he would never think like that. Then 17 times he refused to give it to him. Then he gave it to him and said, "But you must never tell this mantra to anyone else." And just on the way back to Kanchi, immediately Ramanuja announced this mantra publicly to everyone. And the Guru said, "Well, you're going to go to hell for that." He said, "Okay, if you're telling this mantra." He said, "Yeah, I'll go to hell, but everyone else will go to Narayana." So Prabhupada also said, I'm willing to go to hell for the sake of Lord Chaitanya. He said, I may initiate very easily. I will. So, Hare Krishna. Yeah, I've made some offenses and I'll have to suffer for that. Krishna won't protect me. We've heard, maybe some Vaishnavas may be kind on me. We have to be careful. The Vaishnavas are kind. They are kind by nature. Having said all that, it's important to put all of this into perspective. It's not that I'm saying it shouldn't be misunderstood, that I'm saying that all the leaders or all the sannyasis or all the Prabhupada disciples are misled or misleading. I'm not saying that. We should all respect all the great devotees who have dedicated their lives for spreading the glories of the holy name all over the world. But at the same time, when there are serious discrepancies, they should be recognized and dealt with in a Vaishnav manner. Dealing with them in a Vaishnav manner doesn't mean not dealing with them, but respectfully. There will be differences of opinion. They can be somewhat contentious, but we cannot suspend our power of discrimination, as Srila Prabhupada writes in the Srimad Bhagavatam purport. When Draupadi wanted to spare Ashvatthama, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that one should, just to be nice or good, I'm paraphrasing here, one should not